Gabrielle, I know part of your story, you've had this really interesting journey as part of your, I think it might have been part of your training as a doctor or after, you can clarify that.
Yeah.
But you've gotten to work with a lot of elderly people on their deathbed. And where I want to take this, we're making a big pivot here at the end, but I think this ties back to the inspiration piece where you've had this unique look
Yeah.
talking to these people and seeing what life is like at the end, where we can all, I'm sure all of us have taken time to think about that and process that, but I'm sure it's different when you're actually in that part of your
Oh,
life. So
terrible.
talk
Yeah.
about what
Yeah.
that was like for you on the other end, plus what you're able to take from those experiences and still apply into your own mentality in your own life that you can inspire us with.
Yeah. I think that it was probably the most difficult time. I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for, so I did my fellowship at WashU in St. Louis, and I did my fellowship because I was wanting to study obesity medicine and nutrition. And that's why I went there. And part of the deal was, in order for me to go there, part of my funding would be that I would have clinical responsibilities to become a geriatric fellow. I didn't want that. That wasn't what my choice was, but it was presented to me that in order to do X, I had to do Y. Um, so I was very into this health and wellness. And then all of a sudden, I was dropped into a category of patients that I had never serviced before. I mean, you do when you work in the hospital, but you're not seeing 30 patients a day while you're on a palliative care unit, all of which whom are dying, right? For a period of months. Like, not going to geriatric homes where like these people are living in just horrible conditions and working at nursing homes in these severely demented units. Like, I did not know what I was getting into. And I would say the biggest thing, well, number one, it's like bone crushing, right? It's like bone crushing, life crushing, soul crushing, so depressing. Because again, the amount of exposure to death, I think, is above and beyond. So oftentimes we are exposed to one person in our family, right? Like you have one elderly parent or two elderly parents. You're not seeing 30 patients a day for 2 years, right? Of different people. So the amount of volume that you're seeing of like death and depression from families and what the impact is, I was not prepared for. And I would say, arguably, that's why I'm so vocal and so vocal in the space, because I've been there. And, everyone can be in their ivory tower, or you can be like a optimization expert or all these other things, or you can look at mechanisms in the lab. And until you're like sitting there and you're like watching these people, watch them with their families take their last breath, and they're talking about the regrets that they've had in their life. I mean, like it's intense. It is intense. So what did I learn? I learned, number one, you don't have room for error. You don't have room to hear all this nonsense in the space. You don't have that kind of time. That window of youth and change closes rapidly. And to be confused and to miss potentially what will move the needle for quality of life forward because of all the noise in the space is it's a mistake. It's a mistake. So yeah. So the biggest things that I learned is there's not time for all this nonsense that goes around. It's not time to cut out protein. There's not time to, forego exercise. And all this stuff is not right. Like, it's not right. And then the other thing is don't have regrets. Do the things that you want to do.
You've touched on that regret piece a couple times there. One, how it affected you, but also, working with these people at the end of life, their
Yeah.
regrets. There's this common post that I've seen a number of times on the internet of top regrets of people dying. From your experience, what are some of the top things people were regretting? So hopefully we can use that and work back and use that to facilitate how we're spending our time and energy.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it was There was like two big things. It was number one, people felt like they wished they had had better relationships. It was about the relationships with their family and their friends. And then the other, and it was a lot about kids, right? Like, and the other thing was, like there's this one woman, she died of heart disease, and she was like, I'm ready. And I just wish that that my family would be as ready as me, So I don't know, it's not really regret, but I think that preparing, that understanding that it's really fragile and really short,
And correct me if I'm wrong, you talked about how having that experience was a lever for you to get your message out there publicly.
Well, yeah. So I see all these people arguing in the middle, right? Like, do you think I really want to talk about protein anymore?
Probably not, but
I've been talking about this for 8 years.
yeah.
Right? I mean, like, do I do. But do you think that a part of me is like, I don't want to talk about the environmental argument. I mean, the environmental argument, like all this vegan vegetarianism, like at some point it's all ridiculous. It's ridiculous in the way that people don't have the wisdom to understand that this narrative, it doesn't affect, like, who is it affecting, right? Does it affect the 20-year-old, I don't know, in LA or, in a coast? Maybe, but they can recover. The problem is when these blanket statements of reduced dietary protein come out, the unintended consequences to the older population, it's devastating. The unintended consequences of the silly influencer post, they're devastating consequences. And that's why I do what I do. Is I do what I do because if you have a capacity to protect people, you have an obligation to do it. I have an obligation to do it. Can you imagine? I couldn't live with myself if I just sat there and I knew that, environmental veganism is a smokescreen for big companies where we're all fighting amongst ourselves or doing whatever they want. I couldn't live with myself. So I do it because I want to fight for the people in the middle that are confused. I'm a well-trained professional from an extremely reputable institution, trained by one of the world-leading protein experts. If I don't say it and I don't counterbalance the quote longevity experts, then I think that we're going to have devastating consequences. I think that there are going to be devastating consequences. I think that we're going to see a rise in osteoporosis like we've never seen before with these younger women. I feel like these older individuals that are hearing this restrict dietary protein, I think we're going to see an exponential increase in falls and sarcopenia. It's not the right thing to do. So do I want to talk about protein? I mean, the truth is I love the topic, but would I be spending the time after Thanksgiving, which most people are not working, to do this, to get the message out there? I think that if it was a more balanced conversation, I'd probably take the day off.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
People say they don't have time. And the reality is, if you don't have time for fitness, then how do you think you're going to have time for sickness? I think that we have a muscle crisis, not an obesity crisis. And that's why I do what I do. Is I do what I do because if you have a capacity